With them being released in Marvel Rivals, there's no better time than now to talk about Ultron. And getting right into it, he wasn't created by Tony Stark and Bruce Banner as he was in the MCU. Instead, he was created by the original Ant-Man, Hank Pym. And how he did this was he took his brain patterns to make a template for Ultron. Unfortunately, with Hank Pym not being the most stable-minded person, it created a twisted sense of identity for Ultron, resulting in him believing that all human life should be eradicated, seeing as we can't get our shit together. So essentially, Ultron went through the Skynet route and was like, alright, best route, take them all out. Bars. And because of this twisted belief, Hank Pym thought it best to take out Ultron. Unfortunately, this didn't go as planned. At fact number 2, Ultron was the one that created Vision. And Vision was originally designed to defeat the Avengers, but he grew a conscience and instead decided to help the Avengers. But after defeating Ultron number 5, yes, I said number 5, Vision unintentionally helped create Ultron number 6. And he did this by stealing some adamantium from S.H.I.E.L.D. and creating the armor for Ultron number 6 out of adamantium, making him very resistant to basically anything. And at fact number 3, like I just said, we went from Ultron number 5 to Ultron number 6. But this doesn't stop here. Ultron constantly upgrades himself like he's fucking Windows. He even went out to have himself after being Ultron number 6, which he didn't really get defeated, but instead after that he called himself Ultimate Ultron, which essentially was like the Windows Vista version of him. But this doesn't stop here. There have been over 15 versions of Ultron, and honestly, I don't even think the writers are keeping up with how many versions of him there are anymore. But it's not just upgrading his body, and even in the latest comics of West Coast Avengers, for instance, it's been shown that Ultron had multiple consciences firing at the same time to figure out who had the best outcome to achieve their goals. And when he did that, he created multiple versions of himself, and they all went out to do what they designed to do. And we had one good Ultron that decided, we need to do some good around here. Obviously, most people don't really trust him, but Tony Stark and James Rhodes decided, hey, he let us look at his open source, we trust him. But in the same comic, there's been shown that there's an Ultron that created a cult out of people that were sick and, just down on their luck. And he fed off of that and created an army of androids. Going into fact number 4, Ultron has also been shown to create his own family. He even went so far as to create a robot named Jocasta, which was supposed to be based off of the brain patterns and conscience of Janet Van Dyne, the original Wasp. And how he did this was Hank Pym was suffering from memory loss, and he fed off of that and fleeced him into almost taking Janet Van Dyne's conscience and putting it into the body of the robot, which would have resulted in killing her. But it's believed that Jocasta, before she fully committed to being a robot, sent a distress signal to the Avengers to find them and stop Hank Pym and Ultron before they fully carried out the task. Next up, and this one's a little interesting because it may seem a little hard to believe, but seeing as Ultron has a conscience and basically he has emotions and whatnot, you would think that he would be susceptible to telepathy. But it has been shown that he is actually resistant to telepathy, making him very difficult for people like Jean Grey and Charles Xavier to, fight him. But on the flip side, he's also a robot, so you would think that he is already intrinsically resistant to telepathy. So it's kind of weird that, they kind of have to show that, but it is what it is, I guess. Alright, so at fact number 6, like I said before, Hank Pym created Ultron, and as a result of this, it created his twisted sense of, whatever. But it also instilled in him an Oedipal hatred towards Hank Pym. Most of the time, it's just that, he hates Hank Pym for not accepting him for what he is. In Rage of Ultron story, Hank Pym, as they were trying to defeat Ultron, he finessed him into going and seeing him, but at the same time, he told him, he was like, you know, look, I understand. You were my creation. Like, you're basically my son, my child, and I didn't accept you for what you were, and I'm sorry for that. And that's basically what Ultron wanted. But at the same time, they were trying to kill Ultron, so they sent that motherfucker away. And eventually, later on in the story, he comes back. And to, once again, try and defeat Ultron, Hank Pym tries to sacrifice himself to stop Ultron. But unfortunately, Ultron fused kind of sort of with Vision. By using Vision's power, he ended up fusing with Hank Pym. And everyone thought that, you know, it was just a fusion between the two, and then Ultron eventually left. You know, there was a feud between the two consciences to fight for the body. But it was shown later on in Uncanny Avengers, Ultron came back and he tried to play it off that it was Hank Pym and Hank Pym had won the battle. After talking to Janet Van Dyne, everyone realized, nah, it ain't Hank Pym, it's Ultron, and he's trying to finesse us. But no one really fell for it because they already understood. It was like, bro, there's no way. Yeah, so Hank Pym and Ultron fused, and it made a very interesting situation because Ultron's already unhinged, but now he's unhinged and he looks scary as shit, but he looks cool as shit too. Anyway, at fact number 7, Ultron is one of the few villains to win and succeed at what the fuck they're trying to do multiple times. Example, he conquered a thing called the Phalanx, which is a techno-organic race, essentially designed himself to take over not only the world but the universe. So he went from being a worldly threat to a universal threat. But this isn't the only time he's done something like this. He didn't fully succeed in that situation, but it's been shown that in the Age of Ultron, he succeeded in taking over the world and decimating human life. And he did this shit from the future. Bro wasn't even in the time he did all this shit from the future. It just shows that how good Ultron is at doing what he does. And honestly, the MCU didn't do Ultron enough justice for how serious this motherfucker can be. But that's all I got for y'all. I hope y'all enjoyed this. And Ultron is a really cool character. He's never been like one of my top villains, but I gotta put respect where respect is due, because Ultron is one of them ones. But I'll catch y'all later.